All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, colleagues. I'm Val Hill Jackson. I want to welcome you to day one of a 1.5 day edTPA pilot boot camp for May 12th and May 13th. We really want to thank you all for joining us today at the end of a very challenging semester and year. This is the time in a semester when instructors like to do a little exhale from all that grading. I feel you, brothers and sisters. So I'm so glad you're here, and we want to use your time wisely. So we're going to get started right away. We're just going to jump into it. So today is the first of 2 days of our pilot boot camp. We want you to go ahead and sort of adjust or rename yourselves in the hearing Zoom. For example, if you're joining us from the EPSI department, give yourself a number 2 before your name. TLAC, give yourself a number 1. Please remember that we're having a conversation today. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat, engage your mic, and really engage us, because this is our conversation. The whole sort of objective over the next 2 days is for the instructors of TLAC and EPSI to have a conversation. edTPA is a new performance assessment that's on the horizon, and our students won't be prepared unless we have an opportunity to understand our path forward and have these incredible conversations. Want you all to know that this conversation is being recorded. So if you're a little uncomfortable being on camera, you're welcome to turn off your camera, of course. All right, my friend Cassidy Caldwell, our graduate student out of TLAC and helping out in the Dean's office, she'll be sort of guiding us through this process today. So welcome everybody to day one of our 1.5 day boot camp pilot. All right, let's get going. Cassidy, next slide, please. All right, so I am being joined today by an incredible group of peers, our edTPA pilot task force members. These are instructors, faculty members from across 2 different departments who are serving as leaders and as coordinators. And I thought it was important that we just hold space, let you all see their names, and really to acknowledge them for all the sort of hard work that's been going on behind the scenes since 2020. We've had a lot of starts and stops with our work. We've done a lot of work as individuals, but also as a collective and in our program areas. And now we're really trying very hard to have conversations across the department. The whole purpose of the pilot task force is to build capacity so that we have folks who understand edTPA in our college and are able to share that good news with their peers and their students as well. So I want to really just thank the task force members for hanging in there over the last year. There were times when many of us were just forced with so many things competing for our interests and our time, but you all have held in there. So I just wanted to say thank you. You'll notice when we all get back to campus that many of them have signs that have been created. You'll be able to recognize our task force members with our little door signs next to their office doors. So thank you for being a part of this, this beginning of our journey. And we appreciate you. All right, next slide. So this is our boot camp journey. Over the next 2 days, we are going to really get started in earnest. Today is just a half day, and the focus of today's conversation is to provide an orientation of edTPA, edTPA 101. For our task force members, many of them have gone through so many PD opportunities, but for many of our colleagues on the line today, you probably haven't had an opportunity to sort of sit and have a sort of 30,000-foot view about edTPA and what it's all about. So you're going to get that today. We have a special guest and edTPA Regional Coordinator, Dr. Lisa Brown, is going to share a nice presentation with you all today. And then tomorrow, we're going to do some messy work. And you all know who are curriculum and instruction specialists, that curriculum work, especially the mapping process, can be very messy. It often doesn't feel organized or linear, but it really requires that we, roll up our sleeves, put our heads down, really take the time to look at our programs, right? Sort of an overview, but also dig in deep and look at the courses individually. So we're going to do some messy work. Wear your aprons, roll up your sleeves. Tomorrow will be a messy day, but it's for us. It's for and by instructors, and it's been planned really well by our edTPA task force members. And I really want to give a special shout out to our SPED faculty members who have done a lot of really great engagement in this regard. And we're modeling what we're doing tomorrow after some of their early work. So thank you, Dr. Aaron, Dr. Melissa, Dr. Marsha, Dr. Monica, and Dr. Miranda. I think I named everybody from SPED. But I got to tell you, our folks in TLAC, they have not been, sitting by idly. They've been working really hard. I really want to thank Sarah Raven for her leadership in putting together all of this. We've had our task force members serve as mentors, those from TLAC, and then they've been working alongside the senior methods instructors this semester, helping out them, doing some real coaching with their courses this semester. I'm just thinking about my friend Dawn Parker, who has been since day one, since 2019, showing up at all the PD opportunities. I think, Dawn, you get a gold star for going to nearly everything that's been offered. So thank you to you too. Thank you to everybody. So here's what we're doing over the next 2 days. Day one, orientation, and day two, the messy work. Next slide, please. So today, here's our agenda for our half day. We won't keep you long, but it's really important. We want you all to sort of lean in today's conversation. We want to have a brief welcome from our fearless leaders, Dr. Michael De Miranda from TLAC and Dr. Fui Tong from EPSI. Around 10 o'clock, we hope to hand over the mic to our friend, Dr. Lisa Brown. And then before we say goodbye to all of you, we want to just have you all participate in a real quick 60-second survey. Let me pause here and ask my friend Cassidy if we have Dr. De Miranda and Dr. Tong on the line. All right, well, very good. Let's move to the next slide and welcome our department heads. Dr. De Miranda.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you for that wonderful introduction, Dr. Hill Jackson. I'd like to welcome everyone today. The work that you're about to engage in is extremely mission critical to all of what we do in teacher preparation. I'd like to plant two very small introductory ideas. Well, edTPA is certainly one of the end goal focuses. I think it's more important to step back and elevate the importance of your work towards creating a progression of engaged clinical practice and competence within our program and in the preparation of our teachers. Think of this as how we design a continuum of progressive, more complex practice from entering educational preparation all the way to becoming juniors and seniors and into clinical practice. That progression that you'll be working on tomorrow is so critically important so that it represents an equal and elevated component to content knowledge and pedagogy. The turn to clinical practice is extremely, extremely important for the future of teacher education. And I want you to know how valued your work is, how valued you are, and the good thinking that you will put on this will set us on a new course for the future. Thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you so much for the privilege of your presence in this day and a half. And please know that as your department head, we recognize and observe what you are doing, and we also approach it with a very, very appreciative thank you and affirmation. Have a great workshop.
Thank you, Dr. De Miranda. Dr. Fui Tong, EPSI Department.
Howdy, good morning. Well, it's my pleasure to be here today to join you with this wonderful event. I wanted to share that my experience, I've been serving on a TA task force for the past 6 months, and we are charged to revisit the ALP standards, the English Language Proficiency Standards, and also the TALPAS. And we have been conducting analysis to look at the trend of students' performance, English learners' language proficiency performance over the past 5 years, and the alignment with STAR. So we've identified areas for improvement, and there are always areas for improvement. And I've seen the efforts and the commitment at the state level to continue improving the quality of education for our students in schools. And I think it all boils down to the teacher education that each of us here is committed to and is passionate about. So I do want to take this opportunity to first of all thank our teacher education faculty, everyone here on the call, and particularly our SPED and bilingual faculty in EPSI department. They've been an amazing leader in this collaborative effort. And it's been such a challenging year that we all know, and they rise to the top, and they demonstrate their perseverance, their resilience, and their contribution to the pilot of the edTPA implementation. So I do want to acknowledge their contribution and their commitment first. I also want to thank Dr. Hill Jackson and her team for the strong leadership and for the accommodation and thoughtful and careful planning to roll out this 4-phase edTPA pilot implementation. It's a wonderful journey, and we all have been working together on this. So I want to thank her for her strong leadership. And I also want to thank our friends and colleagues and Dr. De Miranda from TLAC for the collaborative support and for the team building that we all are together today to engage in this wonderful practice-based teacher education boot camp, and for us to continue working together and to ensure a successful completion of the edTPA pilot implementation. So again, I want to thank each of you to join us today for this wonderful event, and I hope we will have a great outcome of this boot camp. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Tong. It's always great to be supported by the leadership. We appreciate you both being here today. I think it's appropriate at this time to acknowledge a couple of our visitors with us today. We have Pam Wetherington from edTPA. Pam, would you please engage your mic and say a quick hello?
Hey, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Such a joy to always be able to hang out with my good friends at TAMU. My name is Pam Wetherington, and I am one of Pearson's senior educational consultants. My primary role with Pearson is to support Texas's edTPA pilot, primarily the technical and operational aspects that are associated with edTPA. Glad to be here this morning. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. And we have our friend DeMarco. DeMarco, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, so please introduce yourself, sir.
That's okay. It's one of those Louisiana last names. So it's DeMarco Petrie. I am an education specialist for the Texas Education Agency, and I work to lead the pilot work in the state. So I am pretty much the go-to person on the state side, and I have the pleasure of working with Pam and Lisa on the state pilot support team, making sure that all of our programs are receiving the support that they need to effectively and successfully implement edTPA during this pilot phase. And I am happy to be here in this learning space with y'all this morning.
Thank you for joining us today, DeMarco. You've been really great support, you and Pam. I don't know where we would be, and you're always at the ready to lend support. So we appreciate you being here. And by the way, you owe me some gumbo. I still say mine will trump yours any day of the week, but it's on, right?
Yes, it's forthcoming.
Okay. All right. And then last but not least, we have our friend, Dr.
Taste testers.
Very good. All right. And then we have, last but not least, our friend, Dr. Lisa Brown. Lisa is going to give our presentation at the top of the hour. But so Lisa, just say a quick hello, and then I'll introduce you formally later.
Okay, thank you, Val. I'm so happy to be here today, and I'm happy to join your powerful team here and your powerful leadership. I am a regional coordinator with TEA, working with TEA and Pam, and I support universities throughout and programs throughout Texas in implementing the edTPA pilot. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you today.
All right, so Lisa's our faithful presenter, and we're going to hand over the mic to her in a few minutes. But before we do, I want to give you all a quick sort of overview of sort of our implementation plan. So let's continue. Next slide, please, Cassidy. So, you know, as our department has just mentioned, we are now sort of into a new era and when it comes to teacher education. For many, many years now, we have had for our students what is called the Pedagogy and Professional Responsibilities exam. And that exam is being phased out. It's a paper pencil test. And when you think about one of the most important sort of careers on the planet, being a teacher, it really makes sense that we would look at more authentic forms of sort of evaluating the competencies of teachers. And so we're now being faced with performance assessments, and edTPA is a type of performance assessment. So what we will probably have happen by 2023, the state of Texas will be looking at a lot of different sort of variations or opportunities to introduce performance assessment. But we are really sort of feeling and hearing that we're going with edTPA as the performance assessment for future teachers in the state of Texas. So our teachers at the clinical phase will be required to take a little snippet of their work, a little recording, and then have it evaluated. And there are many pieces to that evaluation, like commentary, and that we need to sort of support them in getting ready. So this shift from paper pencil to more authentic forms of assessment, I think, has come just in time. Next slide, please. So you're going to learn about the tasks of edTPA. And I know you've heard this word edTPA for many of our friends on the line. And you're like, what is this thing, right? So this thing really is just good teaching, right? The three tasks of edTPA are planning, instruction, and assessment. And I know they don't sound foreign to any of you who are on the line who have built careers in teaching, because that's just what we do. So it's not foreign. It does not create a kind of mismatch with the Texas teacher evaluation system. It's perfectly aligned to all the good work that you currently do. You are already doing this work. And our teachers in the state of Texas are already being evaluated in these areas. So what we're going to do over the next couple of months is sort of, do a kind of gap analysis, see what we're doing, see what is missing, and ensure that our babies, our future teachers, are ready to rise to the occasion. Dr. Lisa is going to unpack these for us later today. Next slide, please. So how did we get here? How did we, the College of Education and all of our teacher ed programs, become involved in edTPA? Well, the conversation started happening at the state level 2016, 2017. Contracts were signed probably early 2018. By fall 2018, there was a presentation by TEA at the CSOAP meeting. We all learned at that time about the redesign with teacher education. A lot of folks were excited. Many people were nervous. And a lot of folks, I gotta tell you, were absolutely angry. They said, why weren't we involved? What happened to our voices? We were left out of this. And so what happened was a kind of pause. SBEC gave TEA to go ahead and institute a kind of like 2-year pilot. So TEA is, I think they are probably wrapping up year 2. Year 3 will start very soon. And we've been selected to be a part of the year 3 pilot. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So in 2019, we started some conversations and some mini workshops around the college to share a little bit of information about edTPA. Not a lot of people turned out. A lot of folks are saying this thing isn't going to happen. Why do I have to go to these workshops? I get it. A lot of things come and go, but I got to tell you, this thing is not going away. It's really important that we really, put our heads down and learn what it's all about. In 2020, got to go ahead to assemble the task force. These are our friends, instructors, and faculty from across TLAC and EPSI who came together to help build capacity to ensure that we had folks who understood how this worked and how we could work better as a team to implement these ideas around the 3 tasks into our syllabi. Then in fall 2020, there was a renewed commitment by TEA to extend the pilot from 2 years to 3 years. At the same time, I think you all remember that our dean gave a nice address back in November. It was November 6th, as a matter of fact, to say, yeah, we're doing this, we're going forward. And we need to get serious about this work because the consequential year is quickly approaching. By 2021 and 2022, we've decided that we need to move forward with a 4-phase implementation process. You all have seen the video by now, hopefully. It was assigned to you also as sort of pre-work to take a look at that 4-phase implementation process. But our job over the next couple of semesters is to spend this time, getting instructors ready with the relevant PD that they need, but also spending that time supporting our students. And we're going to talk about those cohorts of students that we need to help get prepared. And then in 2023, we hope to be ready come January 2023. So that means that we're going to really have to pay attention to implementing this 4-phase process with fidelity. Next slide, please, Cassidy. All right, so I think it's important that we clear up a couple of terms here because you've heard the word pilot, and I want to make sure that you understand that there are 2 parallel pilots going on at the same time. There is what's called the external pilot, and that is the pilot that we're doing in conjunction with TEA. We are going to support a cohort of students to submit their edTPA portfolios. And that submission time, that first submission will be spring 2022. And then we'll have something called the internal pilot. And that just means that, we're not only are we working with maybe those students in senior methods and clinical teaching phase, but it also means that we have work to do with the courses that are downstream, right? Like the methods courses, like the foundation courses. The internal pilot also includes the professional development of our instructors and all the other things that we need to do to get ready for edTPA. So again, there are 2 pilots, the external pilot as well as the internal pilot for edTPA. Next slide, please, Cassidy. So a little bit about the stakeholders, because there's a role for everyone to play. When it comes to edTPA, it's really important that we understand that edTPA is a curriculum matter. And so all curriculum matters begin and end with faculty. The dean's office, TEA can't tell us what to do with our curriculum. All those matters are driven by the faculty. So it's important that you all understand that the fidelity of the implementation of edTPA rests in the hands of the faculty. It's up to faculty members to ensure that we have a successful implementation. The role of undergraduate office, academic affairs, Dr. Cherry's office is to support sort of degree issues, any issues with financial aid. My office with the Office of Ed Prep is focused on certification, and edTPA is an exam that leads to certification. But when it comes to supporting our students, the real sort of focus, real sort of lever of support begins and ends with the faculty. Next slide, please. So our edTPA stakeholders who are responsible for lifting and engaged in this process, we have external stakeholders, people like our central administration with school districts, our cooperating teachers, mentor teachers, and even community colleges. Because let's think about this. A lot of our students come from community colleges. So we have to have conversations with those stakeholders as well. Our internal stakeholders are our candidates, the faculty, university supervisors, field placement directors, and other personnel, and the college leadership and dean's office. There's a role for all of us to play. Next slide, please. So our current system of clinical teaching, and this is just for TLAC, if you take a look at the left, by the time our students get to clinical teaching, they have no interaction with faculty. They're working, it's field placement officers, university supervisors, and cooperating teachers. And the candidate is central to this arrangement. But with edTPA, we're going to have to shift. And I'm talking about TLAC. Bilingual and SPED are a little bit different. Faculty are absolutely and must be engaged in that last semester to support the clinical teacher. That's the work that we have to do over the next year to support our students. Next slide. And I'm moving very fast, keeping an eye on the clock here. So as we get ready for edTPA by 2023, which by the way is just a year and a half, we have 3 opportunities to get a little practice under our belt, everyone. We have cohort A, which are our students in spring 2022. We have cohort B, our students next fall, and then we have cohort C. We don't have a lot of opportunities to practice. The good thing about cohort A, spring 2022, we got a little funds from TEA to support their exam. So, you know, it's an expensive exam. It's about $300, $311. And so we'll have some monies to offset the cost for that first group. We want to get as many students into that first cohort as possible from across our programs and from across the departments. Next slide, please, Cassidy. So we're moving forward with a 4-phase process. Phase 1, spring and summer, the focus is on our faculty. PD, a lot of support with mentoring and coaching from our task force members, and TLAC with some of the senior methods instructors from TLAC as well. Phase 2 is fall 2021. That's when we actually have integration of these tasks into our coursework for TLAC and EPSI. PD for our faculty continues. Phase 3 is next spring and fall. We hope to onboard more programs. Cohorts A and B will submit their portfolios. And then phase 4 is 2023. Our goal is to ensure that we're ready to go. Faculty feel empowered, supported, and our programs are ready to rock and roll by then. And that's our goal. Next slide. I want to spend some time on this slide tomorrow in the interest of time, but I want us to walk through how we're going to move forward to ensure that not just our senior methods courses and the clinical teaching courses are supported, but we have to ensure that all the courses downstream are supported as well. We're going to talk about this timeline with a little bit more depth, I believe, tomorrow. We're going to put this on the back burner until tomorrow. I hope many of you who are on the call are planning to join us tomorrow. We do plan to record just in case you're going to be pulled away tomorrow, but we do hope that you can join us tomorrow. Tomorrow, as a reminder, we're going to really sort of do a deep dive into the curriculum mapping, as well as looking at our courses individually as well. So please plan to join us for tomorrow. So having said that, what I want to do now is end Cassidy, and we want to give Dr. Lisa Brown the reins here. And Lisa, are you ready?
Yes, I am. I am ready to go here.
I had to speed up there. I wanted to make sure we had time for your presentation for sure. I know you've done a lot of great work. So friends, it's my pleasure to introduce to you all right now, Dr. Lisa Brown. I just have a very short bio I'd like to share with all of you. Dr. Lisa Brown is our regional coordinator for the edTPA pilot. She has a PhD in teacher education and leadership, curriculum, and instruction. She is a National Academy consultant with the American Association of Colleges of Teacher Education. She is a national scorer for the edTPA elementary assessments. Dr. Brown is the curriculum coordinator for Austin Community College and teaches instructional design and presentation and secondary literacy instruction. She is a former state educator preparation specialist and 3rd and 6th grade teacher. Dr. Brown is passionate about the strength of edTPA and what it brings to our profession, and is dedicated to supporting us as we move forward. Everyone, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Lisa Brown, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Hill-Jackson. I am so excited to be here. As she said, I am very passionate about what edTPA does for our programs, but until we have a good standing knowledge of edTPA and all of the components of it, we won't be able to effectively implement it or understand what we need to do to support our students in it. And so we have an hour to do just an overview of this. But we, as Pam and I always talk about, we are constantly learning new things about edTPA. And so my little spinning wheel is coming up and I've got the PowerPoint loading here. It takes a lot of time to go through all the materials, but you've got great leadership in your program that helps you to kind of go through what's available there, what are the things we need to focus on first. And then as you work through that, you'll begin to see how much of this you already have in your program and how much of it can strengthen your program as well. So we'll just give a quick overview. As Dr. Hill-Jackson said, in Texas, we are changing a little bit of how we're licensing. For the past 2 years, we've had the option for our teacher candidates to take either the PPR, the Pedagogy and Professional Responsibilities Assessment, which is, as most of you know, a 5-hour, 100-question multiple choice test, or have the edTPA. So this is currently in administrative code as an option for licensure assessment. It has been for the past 2 years. There have been numerous programs that have participated in the pilot for the edTPA, and there have been many, many teacher candidates who have certified using edTPA for their licensure assessment. So these are the 2 options in code right now. That is anticipated, definitely this will continue to be the 2 options for a while. And then I wish we had a crystal ball, it would make our lives a whole lot easier to know what's coming down the pike. So the PPR is $116. The edTPA, as Dr. Hill-Jackson said, is a lot more, but during the pilot, TEA is subsidizing that registration fee to make the fee the same as the PPR. So the candidates will be reimbursed for taking edTPA. They will be reimbursed the difference once they receive a passing score. The mentor teachers are given a stipend of $250 if they complete training and support a candidate who successfully passes the edTPA. So there's some incentive for some extra help from our mentor teachers. If the candidate is an employee of the district as an intern or as an instructional aide, they can have a full reimbursement of the edTPA fee. So there's some different options there that Dr. Hill Jackson can help you work through, help the candidates work through. For the PPR, there's a passing score minimum, a cut score of 240. For the edTPA, right now with the pilot, until it has gone through this pilot and we have more data, the passing requirement is a scoreable portfolio, meaning that the candidate does not receive more than one condition code in each of the 3 tasks or 4 tasks for elementary. And so there isn't a cut score. It's an educative process for the state and for our candidates and for our programs. So until it is fully implemented, if that's what happens, then this cut score will be established after we've had some data by the state to be able to determine a cut score. The time commitment for the PPR is preparation time, taking the test, studying for that test, which, as we all know, can teach candidates some, doesn't really give them great feedback on what they know or what they can do well. The time commitment to the edTPA is an authentic classroom experience of planning, instruction, and assessment, and then in elementary, a math reteach. So the time commitment, rather than spending time studying for a test and going in and taking a test, they are doing what they're doing in the classroom and having that authentic experience with additional coaching from your program, from their mentor teachers. Through the planning, they create a portfolio that has 3 to 5 lesson plans that cover at least 3 hours of instruction, and the instructional materials that go with that, the assessments that go with that, and then they write a commentary about that planning to describe why they're doing what they're doing, how that impacts student learning, how it aligns to student needs, how that aligns to research and theory, and we'll walk through all of this as we go through. The instruction, they take a video of their instruction. We have our candidates video every lesson that they give, and then they select 2 10-minute videos or 20 minutes total of video, and then give an analysis of what went on in the commentary. And then the assessment task, they provide student work samples, they demonstrate the feedback they've given to those students, they do a commentary analysis of the assessment, an evaluation of student learning and growth, and they include all of that in the commentary and then describe what they will do with next steps of instruction and how to help those students use the feedback to strengthen performance. In the math reteach, they take a math lesson that they've previously taught and they evaluate one that students need a little more training or help on, or some reteaching. They evaluate the original lesson, the original assessment. They prepare a reteach lesson, give that lesson, and then evaluate student growth from that. So we'll go through these in a little more detail. That's just a quick overview of TPA and PPR. But the difference is, a commitment to study for a test, a brain dump that comes in when you go to that 5-hour test, or an authentic experience where you really dig into what you're doing as a teacher in the classroom in an authentic experience and an authentic assessment. So as Dr. Hill Jackson said, the edTPA pilot has been going on in the state of Texas, began in 2019. We had, I'm not sure how many programs started that first year, but we've had candidates submitting edTPA portfolios since fall of 2019 and spring of 2020. This past year, we had about 32, 33 programs that were involved in the edTPA pilot. And then for next academic year, we're in the 40s. I'm not sure what the final number landed out at. It's like 42 or 44 programs that we participating. So we have almost half of the programs in Texas participating in the edTPA pilot. Those are university programs, they're alternative certification programs, there's master's certification programs. All different types of programs in Texas that certify teachers are involved in the edTPA pilot. TEA is very financially invested in this. As I said, those candidates who are employees of districts, they receive full reimbursement for their edTPA fee plus a $250 stipend. And then their mentor teachers receive $250. Those who are in a traditional student teaching or clinical teaching situation have a reimbursement to make the fee equal to the PPR. And so you can see the financial investment that TEA has in this pilot, and then the time investment that the programs have in the pilot. So we have almost half our programs in Texas just spending a lot of time and effort in understanding edTPA, implementing it, integrating the components into their programs, and just really digging in deep into the edTPA. So you can see the investment is going to be something that sets a foundation for putting this in place in Texas. And when we put that type of investment in something, it's a serious matter that is not going to just go away or disappear. There's going to be some changes in what happens. Again, I wish we had a crystal ball to see what those changes are, but it is moving forward in Texas. And the pilot is a very important part of what SBEC looks at every month in the meetings that they have. So let's look at the edTPA portfolio a little bit more deep. So from day one of the classroom, teachers are required to have a strong toolbox of skills to support student learning. So they plan rigorous lessons. They have to take into consideration the needs of their students. They teach those lessons in a way that encourage student engagement, deep learning, and then they assess if their students have learned what they needed to learn in that lesson. And then the cycle begins again. So imagine the cycle of effective teaching. You've probably seen this in your program. It's what you do with your students. It's what you teach. The edTPA as a performance-based measure is aligned by design with the cycle of effective teaching and meaningfully measures the teacher candidate's ability to actually do the work in the classroom. A teacher candidate builds a portfolio of their teaching practice. They demonstrate their ability to plan instruction, to plan assessments, and really understand how to integrate the TEKS into what they're planning so that they build that content, knowledge, understanding with their students. They support their students with their very learning needs. They use their knowledge of students in the lesson design and assessment design, and then ways to monitor student learning throughout the learning segment should all be part of those plans. In the assessment section, or in the instruction section, the edTPA assesses the candidate's ability to facilitate instruction in a way that establishes a supportive, productive learning environment. There's a rubric that really just evaluates the quality and comfort of the learning environment, the support of students, and then the way the candidate engages all of the students in learning. Are they providing ways to deepen student thinking and be able to really engage those students in active learning? And then there's a rubric that evaluates the candidate's ability to evaluate their instruction and see what they could do better, what they did well, and then how they really taught that subject-specific learning. And we'll look at how that's described in edTPA in the handbooks. And then task 3 is an assessment of the candidate's ability to analyze the assessment results by analyzing student learning during instruction, looking through assessment results, creating charts and graphs to evaluate, to really do those good deep data digs that we want all of our students to know how to do. And then how to provide targeted feedback to students, meaningful feedback that changes the student's ability to understand what they're doing, helps them to have strategies and ways to do better in the next assessment or in the next task. So targeted feedback on areas of strength, areas for growth, and then supporting students in using that feedback to continue their growth. So using assessment meaningfully to help students to grow and to improve instruction and to make sure that our students are achieving what they need to in the assessment or in the learning segment. So these are all just a really strong overview of what we're doing with the edTPA performance assessment. Again, there's 3 tasks for most of the content areas. If we're elementary, there's a 4th task, that math reteach, that we'll talk a little bit more here in a minute. So by gathering authentic evidence of teacher practice during the course of their clinical placements or internship, Texas edTPA portfolios are really snapshots of what is happening in Texas classrooms. This assessment is aligned with SBEC's expectations for educators. It is subject specific. Each subject area has its own handbook. So it is subject specific, meaning that candidates are planning, instructing, and assessing in subject matters and mastering of the TEKS. The edTPA requires candidates to use their knowledge of the learning environment, including academic, language, social, emotional development, students' prior academic learning, their lived experiences, their personal, cultural, community assets. All of these things should be incorporated in the planning of the instruction. So this means that the teacher candidates must have a deep understanding of Texas students and their specific needs. And then finally, as edTPA is a portfolio-based assessment comprised of artifacts, it presents actual evidence of candidates' ability to instruct and assess in Texas classrooms. edTPA has 28 subject-specific areas, and I said each one of these has their own handbook. And so you'll want to get a hold of the handbook for the content area that you teach. You can see here that we have several elementary handbooks. For the edTPA pilot, we are using the elementary literacy with mathematics task 4. So that's the elementary education literacy with math task 4. What it will look like when implementation goes full bore, I only can guess. I'm hoping that there will be an option of elementary math with literacy, or an elementary literacy with math, or possibly just elementary literacy and elementary mathematics. We're not sure what it's going to look like when they implement. But for the pilot, we're using this elementary education literacy with mathematics task 4. The middle childhood, you can see we have these subject areas in middle childhood and secondary. They're very similar, but there's a little bit some nuances between the middle and the secondary handbooks. And then we have just subject specific over here on the right-hand column for all different content areas that are in your program. These are all part of the pilot. So each one of these subject specific handbooks has language to match with the learning that takes place in that content area. So I have listed here just a few of the subject specific learning foci. So I'll give you a minute to just kind of read through this and think about how this aligns with the TEKS and how this aligns with good teaching. And something that you'll notice as you look through this is moving through the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. We start with conceptual knowledge, conceptual understanding, learning facts and concepts, that basic understanding. Then we move through to skills that support those ideas, those strategies, application of scientific practices through inquiry, procedural fluency in math, in social studies, inquiry, interpretation, and analysis. And then finally, those highest levels is making those reading, writing connections in literacy, creating a written product, responding to complex features in text. In science, developing evidence-based explanations or reasonable predictions about real-world phenomena. Math, mathematical reasoning and problem solving. In social studies, building and supporting arguments and conclusions. So you can see that we're really taking the students from that basic level all the way through Bloom's taxonomy to those higher levels of thinking. And helping them to apply the learning in real world situations and with real world experiences and phenomena. As our candidates have begun to grab onto these subject specific foci, their lesson plans have become much more rich, and they're taking their students through from the basic levels to those application and higher level thinking experiences. And so it's really helped our students to really plan very rich units. And so we've changed to focus on a 3 to 5 lesson unit rather than just individual lessons, so that they can see how learning builds throughout the unit to go to those higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And that's one of the changes we've seen in some programs in the state, is they were doing independent lesson planning. Now they're doing full unit and analysis of how the learning builds across the learning segment. So with these subject specific foci is one of the ways that edTPA has enriched the programs in Texas and our program, because it really helps our candidates to develop meaningful experiences for their students. edTPA was developed at Stanford University. Stanford University has been involved for the past 25 years in performance-based assessments. They were key in the development of the National Board certification for teachers, the in-task standards, in-task portfolios, and then the PACT in California. Some of you may be familiar with that. It was kind of the predecessors to edTPA. So what is in edTPA is the result of rich research and development and performance assessments for teachers. So there's been a lot of contributions from researchers. Linda Darling-Hammond is very involved in this. There are several very prominent researchers that are involved in that. There's a lot of review of bias and sensitivity. Scale is the developer of edTPA. Some of you may be familiar with Scale, and their focus is assessment with equity and making sure there's equity. So there's a lot of bias and sensitivity review. There was input from design and review teams, from university faculties, national subject matter organizations have been involved in this development, and then go down to K-12 teachers and administrators and faculty in schools. So there's a lot of research and rich material that comes from the edTPA because it's backed by such strong research and development. edTPA has been used in the United States for many years. I think it's, I'm not sure how long. I wish Pam were here, she could tell us how long edTPA has been in practice, but it's gone through a lot of evaluation investigation to make sure it's valid and reliable in assessing our teachers. So bringing that rich information and that research into our programs is really resulting in strengthening our programs. So in edTPA, there are two types of evidence. There's artifacts and there's commentaries. Commentaries are done with each one of the tasks. And those commentaries are so valuable to help the candidates to describe what they're thinking, how they're applying what they've learned in your program, and how that impacts student learning. So we have the three main tasks, and in elementary, again, there's a fourth task. So let's just look at those three tasks. In task one, planning, you begin with creating an instructional and social context for learning, where you describe who your students are, what your school situation is, and how that impacts learning. Then you create 3 to 5 lesson plans, instructional materials, and assessments, and then you write a planning commentary to describe what you're doing, why you're doing it, how that aligns to research, and how that's going to meet student needs. In task 2, again, we use video clips. It's just a snapshot of what is happening in that classroom for 20 minutes of that unit. The candidate selects those video clips and then writes a commentary on that. And then task 3, using the data from the assessments, you select one key assessment, analyze the learning across the whole class, look at trends for learning, areas where students struggled across the class, and then they analyze the learning and show feedback for 3 focus students, and then write an assessment commentary. So in all 3 of the tasks, there's an analysis of teaching effectiveness, and then there's a tie-in with academic language development. Academic language is woven through all 3 of the tasks, and it's an important part of edTPA. So again, our commentaries give the candidates an opportunity to describe their plans, provide descriptions or evidence of what the teacher did, what the students did, but they also need to justify the rationale for the plans in terms of what they know about their students needs, how they're supporting student-specific learning needs, differentiating for students who need additional help, and then they need to make connections to research and theory to support what they've done. So we're bringing in what we've taught them in our classes and how research helps us to create the best instruction for our students. In the commentaries, they also analyze what is happening in terms of student learning and how their teaching is affecting student learning, and then explain the feedback given to students, the next instructional steps based on the assessment results, and just explain what they're doing, why they're doing it. The edTPA handbooks begins with a section on the purpose of edTPA, gives an overview of the assessment. It gives prompts and guidelines to help candidates think through, what do I need to think about? What do I need to do? What do I need to write? And how will my teaching be assessed? It gives them the rubrics that they will be scored on so that they can see what the scores are going to be looking for. Then talks about professional responsibility. It has the context for learning and some directions on how to complete that, and then a glossary for edTPA terms. So as you're looking at the handbook, in fact, let's look at one of those handbooks right now. This is the elementary elementary literacy with mathematics, which is the test that is used for our candidates in Texas. If you look here in the table of contents, you see each one of these sections. As you can see, this is a 68-page long handbook. It takes a while for candidates to get used to it. It'll take a while for you to get through it and to evaluate it. But as you look through each one of the tasks, they're structured basically the same. So you can look through this and see what students think about what they do, what they write, and then the evidence, and it gives them the rubrics. So as you are beginning your journey and looking at this, start by looking at the rubrics. This is rubric 1, planning for literacy learning. You have a guiding question. How do the candidates' plans build students' understanding of an essential literacy strategy for comprehending or composing text and the skills that support that strategy? So that is one of the rubrics. You have 15 rubrics in most of the handbooks. In the elementary math, with literacy with math, you have 18 rubrics. So spend some time first looking at the rubrics and see what they're going to be doing and what they're going to be assessed on. When you're looking through these, start at level 3 and evaluate that. This is the mid-range level for candidates. Candidates' plans for instruction build on each other to support learning of the essential literacy strategy for comprehending or composing text with clear connections to skills. We want our candidates to work to get a level 3. We want them to stretch to a level 4. We expect that some candidates will get a level 2 or level 1, but if you start looking at level 3 and then see what we need to add on to build up to a level 4 or level 5, it helps us to know what we're going to be working with our students on. So there's just some subtle differences. So in this one, there is a meaningful context that supports the learning of the strategy with clear and consistent connections to related skills. And then level 4 plus, candidates' plans build an authentic connection between reading and writing. So they're meeting level 3, they're adding on level 4 and level 5. And the candidate explains how they will use learning tasks and material to lead students to independently apply the essential literacy strategy and related skills. And then when you think about that, that's what we want our students to do. That's what we want our candidates to be prepared to do every day in their classroom. It's just good teaching. And in literacy, this is where we want to lead our students. So as you're looking through those handbooks, I would just, it's really nice because this table of contents is hyperlinked. So when you get to there, you can just go back to this and just click on each one of these rubrics and look at them and evaluate what the students are being evaluated on. That gives you an overview of where you're going with what you want to do in your syllabi and in your courses. So look through the rubrics first, get an idea of what the students are being assessed on, what they need to do, and then kind of branch out from there. There's so much material for edTPA. As I said, I'm continually learning and I'm continually finding new things that I didn't know before, and it takes time to work through it. But as you begin to see this, you'll see that this is what we already do in our program. This is what we want our candidates to be able to do in their classrooms. The rubrics, as I said, the level 3 is the level of an early beginning teacher. All the rubrics are set up that way. A level 5 is a highly accomplished beginning teacher. There are superstars that we produce in our program. They're student focused. They use flexible groups and support individuals in their learning needs. Their plans are integrated, intentional, and well executed. That's our star students at a level 5. We do see some of the students in our program that are struggling. Those not ready students, they would score a 1 or a 2. They're teacher focused. They only teach to the whole class. They don't reach out and grab the needs of those individuals and groups. Their plans are often fragmented or indiscriminate, or they lack that intention and purpose in their lesson plans. So that's how the rubrics are structured. Again, we want to look at a level 3 to start, and then just look at those levels 4 and 5 and really help our candidates to be prepared to meet those levels. The edTPA is really just effective teaching skills. You see here, these are a lot of the foci that are in our edTPA portfolio and the rubrics. As you look through there, you'll see all of these things that we want to have our candidates have a strong knowledge of their students and be able to support students in their individual learning needs. We want them to use theory and research to provide the best research-based strategies and instructions. We want them to be student-centered. We want their planning to be intentional. We want them to be able to differentiate. And then we always want them to be able to self-evaluate and see where they could strengthen their instruction, where they can improve student learning and growth. So really the edTPA is just effective teaching skills. And as you look through that, think about what we already do in our program and how we can really align that with what the edTPA asks and where we can strengthen our program as well. So again, we'll go back to that cycle of effective teaching. Task 1 is the planning task. The rubrics in task 1 focus on these areas. Instruction is the second task in edTPA, and then assessment is the third task. And woven between all of these tasks is academic language. I tell my candidates, language is the vehicle of learning. And if we're not focusing on teaching that academic language and having students use that academic language, they're not going to be learning as well as they possibly could. And so academic language is woven through all three of the tasks. It's assessed in rubric 4 and rubric 14, but it's a part of every single one of the tasks of edTPA. Also, the commentaries are woven through each one of the tasks. In the planning commentary, they're justifying their planning decisions. In task 2, the commentary is analyzing teaching. And in task 3, the commentary is used to analyze using data to inform instruction and to evaluate student learning and growth. And as always, in the center of this cycle of effective teaching is student learning. That is our focus. That is what the TPA focuses on, is how well are students learning what they are supposed to be learning in this learning segment? How are you evaluating that? And what is your evidence that the students learned? And then what can you do to improve student learning? So student learning is at the center of this cycle. So let's go over each task individually. Task 1, the planning task. The artifacts that we're providing for the planning task are the instructional and social context. That's the context for learning. That is a 3-page template that asks the candidates to identify who their students are, what their context is, what their students' specific needs are, IEPs, 504s, areas where students struggle, struggling readers, struggling writers, students who have language challenges, English language students, students who are learning English, gifted and talented students are part of that as well. We need to identify how we can support those and which students we are identifying as having specific learning needs. So in that context, we're learning, they do a deep exploration of who their students are and what their needs are. The next artifact is the lesson plans. And I think Dr. Hill-Jackson has a lesson plan template that you've been working on that will need to be adjusted to fit each department. But having common language in those lesson plan templates will help the candidates to be prepared to answer the questions in the commentary and to really do some meaningful planning, that intentional planning. So you have 3 to 5 lesson plans. It needs to cover 3 full hours of instruction. So if you have a 45-minute class, you're going to need 4 lessons to cover that. If you're in elementary, you might need 5 lessons to cover that 3 full hours. If the candidate doesn't have 3 full hours of instruction, they will receive a condition code and will probably have to redo the TPA. So the lesson plans, instructional materials, students assessment is the other artifact that we provide. And then the planning commentary. There's a template that you can look at in each handbook that gives the prompts. There's 5 sets of prompts for task 1 with some ABCs below them, where it asks questions, has candidates explain what they're doing, how they're meeting student needs, how the lesson plans build on each other to a central focus, how they're including academic language, language supports, how they're relating all of this to learning and theory, and then an evaluation of how they're assessing the students, if that's going to gather the evidence they need to demonstrate student learning and growth. So those are the artifacts they're creating for task 1. The rubrics, these are the titles of the rubrics. Rubric 1, planning to build student understandings. How did this lesson plan, how was it designed? What is the central focus? How do the lessons build on each other towards that central focus? Rubric 2 is planning to support varied student learning needs. So this is your differentiation rubric. How are you supporting students as a whole class? How are you supporting those individuals with specific needs? And how are you supporting groups with common needs? Rubric 3 is using knowledge of students to inform teaching and learning. That is focusing on personal, cultural, community assets, student interests, what they're doing outside of school, and how you can use that to bring students in, increase their engagement, increase their interest in what you're teaching. And then how are you relating all of your planning to research and theory? So rubric 3 is a research and theory rubric. Rubric 4 is identifying and supporting academic language demands. We're looking at vocabulary, we're looking at syntax, and we're looking at discourse and other language demands. So the candidate needs to identify what students are doing with language in this unit, what their language needs are, and then how they're going to provide scaffolds and supports to help students to be successful in understanding and applying the academic language in the lesson and in the unit. So there's a lot of great questions in there that We have learned a lot about academic language in our program, and it's become just an integral part of every one of our classes. And then rubric 5, planning assessments to monitor and support student learning. How are you planning assessments throughout the learning segment? What are the different formative and summative assessments you are using? And then how is that going to provide you evidence of student learning? Now, as we've gotten our scores back, we found that our candidates are not scoring very well on rubric 5, but yet task 3, the assessment task, they're doing very well on. That's their strongest task. And so we're seeing that they're assessing, but they're not really explaining what they're doing with their assessments, how they're creating it, and how that is gathering evidence. So that's an area that we're focusing on right now in our program to help our students do a better job of planning those assessments and describing what they're assessing, how they're assessing, and why they're using that to gather student learning and student growth evidence. So that's an overview of task 1.
Dr. Brown, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you go back to task 1? In your experience in preparing candidates for this exam, much of the practice with these tasks is happening in non-field-based classes.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we have students do like a little mini lesson in front of their peers.
Yes.
And when they're planning and when they're reflecting on that lesson delivery, it's a kind of a force in my experience, and maybe there's a workaround, but to ask them how they use the knowledge of their students to inform their teaching and learning, because it's inauthentic. I was just wondering, like, to hear you speak to that sort of that piece.
Yeah, that's a great question, because that was something we struggled with at the beginning. So what we've done with our candidates is we've had them go to greatschools.org and identify a school where they would like to teach. So they identify that school, they look at the student demographics, they look at the population there, they look at where they are test score wise, and they just create kind of a scenario of what a classroom in that school would look like. So they have a student population they're focusing on, and then looking at that context for learning and just creating a scenario that represents what they found in that school. So that's a great question. And then if they can, in the future, we're hoping they can go observe in a classroom in that school and then get more information as we move through the program to complete their classroom observations. And then so that they're looking at a specific student population. And that really has helped in that area. So that's a great question. And as you go through, you'll probably find other strategies that will help you to do that, help you to identify student population, then just have them think about what are students of this age group interested in, you know, based on the demographics, what are some of the cultural influences that we could bring into the classroom, based on what's going on in that city, do some evaluation of, or what are some of the community assets that we could bring into the lesson plans. So yeah, it is helpful to identify a specific school. Does that help? Okay, great.
Lisa, while you're answering, can I real quickly ask you about what you mentioned about a scorable portfolio has 3 hours of instruction?
Yes.
Okay, so the idea of 3 to 5 lessons, you can't just have 3 if it's not a total of 3 hours.
That's right. Yeah, you need to have 3 full hours of instruction.
Okay, so if it's 50 minutes, like 3 50-minute class periods, that means that they have to go into a 4th? Yes,
they would need to have 4 lesson plans.
Okay, so at elementary, like 1st grade, the idea of the length of a lesson. So if those are shorter.
Yeah. Well, the literacy lessons though usually are longer.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure. Each school has their different requirements, but I know some schools require 90 minutes of literacy instruction a day. Some are 60. And so since it's a literacy lesson that they need to focus on, it's very doable.
Okay, I was focused on like the option of 3 to 5 within that, and that makes sense now why I never really understood why the leeway of 3 to 5, but it makes sense now when you put I had not heard that 3-hour time frame before.
Yeah.
Today. So thank you.
Okay, yes, and that's one thing we really need to check with our candidates is this 3 full hours of instruction, because if not, you could get into condition code and have your portfolio considered non-scorable. So it's an important thing to look at the beginning. So good question. Okay, task 2 is the instruction task. Again, you have video clips. The candidate needs to select 2 10-minute video clips in some handbooks. Each handbook has a little bit different requirements. Some are 20 minutes total, and there's not the requirement for a length for each one. Some say no more than 10 minutes per video clip. So you need to look at the handbook and see what the requirements are for that content area. The video clips have to be unedited. If they are edited at all, they will receive a condition code, and that task will be unscorable. So 10 minutes or a 2 10-minute or a total of 20, again, look at the requirements. Those video clips should capture as much as possible. It's important to have your candidates practice doing video clips and editing them and finding the very best section that shows the things that are required in the rubrics. Before they film the videos, you want them to be very familiar with rubric 6 through 10 so they know what is going to be evaluated in those rubrics. So those 2 video clips, and then the instructional commentary where they analyze what was done in the video clips. They provide timestamps to demonstrate certain aspects that are found in the rubrics. And that commentary really helps them to evaluate their instruction. The rubrics are creating a learning environment that's positive and welcoming and safe for the students, engaging students in learning. How are they providing modeling? How are they providing direct instruction? How are they teaching those subject-specific foci? How are they engaging the students in learning in authentic experiences and authentic tasks? Rubric 8 is deepening students' learning. That's using questions, taking them to those higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, helping them to think through, building on student comments, and really using discussion and engagement and interaction and activities to deepen student learning. 9 is subject-specific pedagogy, how they are teaching the students those subject-specific learning foci and how they are building student learning and growth, focusing on those areas. And then rubric 10 is that commentary analysis of how effective was the lesson, how did the students do, what is the students' responses, how can I improve that? And then research and theory connections. How does this link with research and theory in rubric 10? Task 3 is the assessment task. We ended up adding an entire course in our program to focus on analyzing assessment to inform instruction. So it's using data analysis and feedback to evaluate teaching instruction. So this is a task that takes a lot of thought and preparation during coursework so that students are prepared to do this. I wish I had learned more about data analysis in my program. I ended up working in the classroom with all new teachers and none of us knew how to use data to inform our instruction. So this is a really important thing that we need to do in the coursework so that our students are prepared for that. So the artifacts are an analysis of whole class assessment. So you'll take all of the scores from a key assessment from the learning segment and analyze how students did. What were the trends for learning? What are areas where students struggled? What are areas we probably need to reteach? Where are misunderstandings or misinterpretations? So we're analyzing all of the scores across the class. And then we're analyzing 3 focus students. You select 3 focus students where you go deeply into what they did, how that represents the trends in learning across the class. And all this is done in the assessment commentary. Those 3 student work samples that you use will be submitted. You also will submit the feedback that you gave to those students, and that feedback is evaluated, whether it's specific, whether it's targeted, and how it helps students to improve their learning. So the rubrics are the analysis of student learning. How did the candidates analyze the trends for learning across the class? Rubric 12 is providing feedback to guide learning, giving specific, clear feedback, not just good job or marks right or wrong. What is the specific feedback you've given to students on what they did well and what they could do better at? And then rubric 13, helping the students understand and use that feedback. What are you doing to support students to use that feedback rather than just taking that paper, throw it in the garbage, move to the next unit? How are we using that feedback? Rubric 14 is academic language, analyzing students' language use. Were they able to use and understand the vocabulary? Did they understand the syntax? Did they use discourse effectively using the vocabulary and academic language structure? What are the experiences where they were able to use language in learning? And how did that demonstrate student learning and growth? And then rubric 15, using assessment to inform instruction. What are your next steps of instruction? How are you going to use this assessment to determine what you need to do in the next unit, how you need to support specific students in their needs, in reteaching? What are you going to do with that assessment to help your students to achieve the goals? And then in elementary, you have that task 4, mathematics assessment. Task 4 looks really daunting to our candidates because there's a whole list of artifacts that just feels overwhelming, but it's not that much. And as we walk through, I have a PowerPoint that I walk my candidates through task 4, and it becomes their favorite task. They don't need a video. They can start this one first. So as they're getting their permission slips for their parents to video the students, they can complete task 4 right away when they start working on their edTPA. So the artifacts are a context for learning. If you're using the same students and teaching it to a whole class, the context for learning is going to be identical to your first context for learning if you're using the same students. If you're reteaching in a small group, the context for learning should cover those students in that small group. And it's just the same format that was for the beginning, where you look at IEPs, 504s, specific learning needs. You provide a learning segment overview, what was taught in the original math lesson. You give the original assessment that showed that our students were struggling with this. These are the areas they struggled. You provide the work samples for 3 focus students. These are examples of where students struggled. And then you teach the re-engagement lesson. You give work samples from the re-engagement lesson, and you write a commentary. So it's not preparing a lesson plan. It's not videotaping. It's taking a math lesson that the students need to reteach on, showing the evidence of what went on that first lesson, the assessments, and then reteach it and give the assessment for the second lesson. You describe what you do in your commentary, but you're required to provide a lesson plan for this one. There's only 3 rubrics in task 4: analyzing whole class understandings from the first math lesson, analyzing those individual student work samples, and then using evidence to reflect on teaching. How did I reteach this math lesson? How did my students do? Where do I see their growth? And how do I determine if they have mastered it this time or if we need additional support? So you can see in all of these, it's again, effective teaching skills. This is what we want our program to consist of. This is what your program already consists of. We're just aligning this to edTPA rubrics, sharpening up some areas that has really improved programs across the state. You can see when they brought edTPA in, they find areas where we're not teaching this quite as well as we should, and we can make some improvements in this, and we can use these subject-specific foci to strengthen our instruction, and we can adjust how we're doing lesson plans. And we just see so much strength in the programs across Texas as they've implemented edTPA and brought in these components and aspects of edTPA. Academic language has been strengthened very much across the state and across the nation. In Texas, we seem to do a better job on academic language because we have so many students who have language needs. But across the nation, you can see, especially in Georgia, a lot of the programs in Georgia talk about how academic language was not so much on the radar, and now it is central. So just think about how you already have your program designed and how this just is focusing on these effective teaching skills, and then where we are just going to strengthen, fine tune, realign a few things, and create some experiences for our candidates that will help them to be successful with edTPA. It's all about effective teaching, and it's all about student learning. So edTPA aligns with T-TEST. We have a document that we will provide that you can look at this in more detail. This, I'm just going to give a quick overview because we don't have a ton of time. We have about 10 minutes left, but they have gone through and aligned the edTPA rubrics with the T-TEST dimensions. So here you see an X indicates a shared expectation in the integrated intersecting statements, and a P is a partial alignment. So you can see here, this is the T-TEST rubric for planning, and this is task 1 for edTPA. And you can see all of the areas where they align on the different rubrics across the top. So this is just the 15 rubrics. They didn't align this for task 4. So you can go through and look at this. There's alignment throughout the tasks with the T-TEST dimensions. This is planning as well, and you can see it goes into the assessment, task 3, You can see some of the instruction, task 2 in the planning. You can see a lot of alignment again in task 1. So these are all the planning t-test rubric dimensions. And again, we'll give you this so you can look at it. In instruction, these are the t-test instruction dimensions. And you can see a lot more alignment here in the task 2, which is the instruction task, but you also see alignment in task 1, in rubrics 1 and 2, and in task 3. And here again is more of the instruction dimensions for t-tests. A lot of alignment here. You see how these all just fall in together. We're assessing the same types of thing. And then the learning environment dimensions for t-tests, again, align a lot with that task 2 rubric 6, which is the creating a learning environment. Now the PPR, the professional responsibilities, there's a few alignments there, but this is a performance-based assessment, and we get some of that from the commentaries, the advocacy for student needs and student growth, and then reflecting on practice are some of the areas where there's an alignment there with t-tests. So, but as always, we have multiple forms of assessment that we use to evaluate our candidates' performance. And one of the things we're going to do in our program is take our t-test scores from the first, second, and third observations, and then see how we have areas of weaknesses and areas of strength where we need to strengthen our students. And then we'll take our edTPA and look at the areas where we're weak or where we're strong, and do some planning, curriculum mapping from those two sources of evidence of their student teaching performance. So how do we prepare to support our candidates in our program? The first thing we need to do is build knowledge. We need to go into those handbooks. I know they're 60 pages long, some of them are shorter, some are longer, but we need to start looking at those rubrics, see what is going to be evaluated. You've got great leadership in your program. You've got resources that are set up. I know you have a drive that have resources you can go in. Don't be overwhelmed by the amount of material. There's a lot of material. Start with the rubrics, get an overview of what the assessment is looking at, what the students are doing, and then just kind of keep working, branching through, doing discussions, evaluating how we align in our curriculum. Do that curriculum evaluation. You're going to be doing that tomorrow. Just think about what you already have in your program. Start with a few rubrics that you see really align with your course and evaluate what you're doing with that, and then where you can strengthen, where you can add some projects or add some experiences for your students. And then work together as a team to establish some strong candidate preparation and support. This is not a one and done process. This is ongoing. This is going to be a process that's going to take several years to become very good at it. We've got areas where we need to really work, and areas where we need to train, and areas where we need to fix. Every end of semester, I'm evaluating. I don't think I taught this part very well. I'm completely redoing my academic language presentation for next semester because I didn't feel like it went as well as it could have, because my knowledge is growing. And as my knowledge grows, I'm able to do better with what I'm teaching and how I'm teaching it. But just always remember, it's a team effort. Nobody can do this on their own. We all need to work together. And the more we support our candidates as a team, the more successful they're going to be, the more successful we're going to feel, and the better it's going to go for our candidates and ultimately the students. So as you're working together to prepare, take an inquiry-based approach. Think about your curriculum, identify current alignments, collaborate together to develop what needs to be done in each of the classes. That's one thing we found in our program. Is we got together, we found we were duplicating efforts in some areas, and we had big holes in other areas. We need to look at our curriculum, see where we're strong, where we're weak, where we have holes, and where we're duplicating, and then provide those great connections to real life practice. Think about how you can align what you have, how this aligns to national board, how this aligns to the state standards, the t-tests, and then draw from each other's expertise. You all have experts in certain areas. Work together to create a workable lesson plan template that will work for your students and support them in edTPA. So it's a team effort, and the better we work together, the more effective we're going to be in supporting our candidates. When you start getting score reports, it's very exciting, and you can learn from that. Analyze the data, look at where we're strong. Again, we're looking at rubric 5 right now and saying, oh my goodness, next semester, we need to figure out what we're doing wrong here. And we're going to strengthen it because our candidates are doing great on task 3. Their assessments are just strong and they're good scores in task 3. Rubric 5 should be strong too. So, evaluate where your strengths are, where your candidates are doing well, where we can really do some improvement. I had a candidate, this is one of my candidates that struggled through edTPA. He just could not get his head around the rubrics. He just struggled and he had some problems with his recording. He had his mentor teacher recording and she kept turning off the video and off and it can't be edited. It can't be clips put together. He just had some struggles and I thought, oh, okay, I'm gonna ask him, if you could do this again, would you do this? Would you recommend it to others? And I said, would you do edTPA or PPR? He said, edTPA hands down. I'll admit it was incredibly challenging, but I also think having the edTPA accreditation, he called it, on my resume will carry a lot of weight within the next year. Plus, I learned a lot about myself and learned a lot through the program. So he felt like it was a valuable experience. I expected him to be very negative because of all his challenges, but he absolutely loved it. And he felt like it made him a better teacher. And that's what we're after. TAMU San Antonio had a candidate panel that we had the opportunity to go and visit. And this is a quote from this candidate. I'll let you go ahead and read that. And really that's what it's about, is preparing our candidates to be successful in the classroom, to develop those skills. And I feel like the edTPA is a time that we fine tune what we've taught them in the program, where we help them really apply what they've learned, link those theories and research that they've learned, and to demonstrate, yeah, I learned this stuff in my program and I can do it in the classroom. I think a lot of times our candidates go into survival mode, especially ours are interns. And so they're the only teacher in the classroom. They go into survival mode and they forget all the stuff they learned in the classroom. They're just getting through day by day. But when they have to do the edTPA and they have to justify their planning, they have to plan for academic language, they have to really scaffold and support those students, they come back to what they learned in the program and it all starts to fall into place. And it helps them to be stronger in their classroom, helps them to feel better. And as they've said, it feels like they are more prepared to really take on their classroom and to be successful in supporting their students and to help them to really achieve what they want to do. They're living their dream, and sometimes that dream gets a little muddled that first year. edTPA helps them to pull out of that muddle and really focus again on what's important. And as always, I'm here to support you. I am your regional coordinator. I'm assigned to Texas A&M University, and I am excited to work with you. You have a great leadership, and you have a great structure and great resources. But I am always here. Pam is here, and DeMarco, he's amazing. He is here to help you as well. So any way we can help you, we're happy to do so. So thank you for having me today. Turn the time back over to Dr. Hill Jackson.
Dr. Brown, what a lovely and beautiful edTPA 101. It's a beautiful overview for all of us. On behalf of the task force and all of our peers here at Texas A&M, we want to thank you for your time and for always being available. To my co-learners on the line, I want you all to know you're going to get an email from Cassidy. She's going to share with you all a little quick survey, as well as some information about how to find the documents and resources from today, and with a little reminder to sign up for tomorrow. So, but before you all leave and say goodbye, can you put one word in the chat, how you feel? Like one word. What word describes how you're feeling after, hearing from Dr. Brown today with our little edTPA 101? What feeling are you leaving with? Informed. Nice. Thanks, Kim. Dr. Q says, thank you. Energized. Thanks, Sharon. Anyone else as you say goodbye? Come on, friends. Clearer. I love it, Kelly. Positive. All right. That's the A&M spirit. Clarity. Lovely. Lovely. You guys are amazing. Thank you. Motivated, focused. That's beautiful. That's all because of the task force. Thank you, friends. Thank you so much. Doable. You're absolutely right. it felt daunting, didn't it? Right? But now I think I think we get to see that this is quite doable for sure. Support it. Yes, indeed. All right, thank you, Cassidy. Register for tomorrow. We will follow up with everyone with an email. You all have a great day. To task force members, hang on just for a second. We're going to say goodbye to our other